The Knicks came in expecting to get a trip to Vegas. Unfortunately, they left Madison Square Garden with a slice of humble pie in the NBA Cup quarterfinal round against the Hawks. They lose 108 to 100. We're getting into it next on Locked On Knicks.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And if you didn't know already, your favorite podcast now has a newsletter introducing the Locked On Knicks daily newsletter. One stop for ultimate team and league coverage delivered right to your inbox. Sign up for free now at LockedOnDaily.com. That's LockedOnDaily.com and start your day with the all-new free Locked On Knicks newsletter. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks a part of your daily routine. As always, because we're here for you guys 5 days a week. So make sure you hit the subscribe button first off, and then the auto download function on your favorite podcast app, the notification bell on YouTube, so you never miss an episode. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site The Strickland, as you can find Strick.land, and he's Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster's favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And today we're talking about your favorite team, but not probably your least favorite player, most of you listening, or at least he's working his way back up there. Joel Embiid maybe was tops on the Knicks fan hatred list of current incumbents in the NBA, and then maybe Tyrese Halliburton overtook him in the playoffs, and then Trae Young this year has come back with a vengeance to be like, hey, remember, you're supposed to hate me too, even though allegedly he said in pregame comments that he doesn't like playing the villain, which came up like a million times during the broadcast. I'm calling cap on that. I think he definitely loves being the villain. The Hawks came into New York. They win 108 to 100, had a big comeback. They were down double digits, came back in the third quarter, stormed back. I think their total run there ended up being like 22 to 4 or something like that.
21 to 4. Yeah. And then 25 to 6.
Yeah. Before the Knicks finally, kind of snapped out of it a little bit, but it was already too late at that point. Unfortunately, the Knicks missed. They bounced like two numbers on the broadcast. At first, Alan Hahn thought it was 11 missed threes in a row. Then he corrected to 13, whatever. It could have been 600 for all I care. That's about what it felt like. The Knicks just kind of went, what year was that? The Rockets couldn't hit any, 2017, the 2017 Rockets in that game where they missed like 23 straight threes or whatever.
I think 2018, but not 100% sure.
Whatever year that was. That was basically the Knicks tonight. They couldn't hit a three that whole third quarter, and then the fourth quarter, they end up shooting 11 of 42. So they certainly didn't lack for getting up attempts in this game, but just could not hit them worth a damn. Gavin, I've set the table, and I'll leave you to start eating here because I don't want to pick the first thing to talk about.
Yeah, thanks, buddy. I think I'll start off big picture. I think it's easy to wipe this one away as a bad shooting night and a bad Jalen night and just say, hey, it's that simple. If those two things go wrong, you're probably not going to win a lot of games. But I immediately, the number of the night to me is the 22. I was going to say 20, but I saw I got two more. 22 offensive rebounds for the Atlanta Hawks. That is just disgusting. And it's not something the Knicks, I cannot imagine. I didn't get a chance to look before we started the pod. I cannot imagine they allowed more than 15 in a game last year or even close to that, unless there was, maybe it was like the pre-trade game where everyone was hurt against Orlando or something crazy like that. But like 2:40 left, Knicks are down 9. Hawks just trying to drain clock. They shoot 20 seconds of shot clock, get an offensive rebound, take another 12 seconds. Again, shoot again, offensive rebound, another 12 seconds. That's your ball game, right? Like the Knicks could not get a rebound to save their lives. This felt like maybe some recency bias. I probably have already said this at times this year, but I'm going to call it the game they've missed Isaiah Hartenstein the most. You watch him in a similarly competitive game against a undeniably better team than the Hawks and the Dallas Mavericks, and he made all the difference for the Thunder last night, right? Rebounding, dunking, like just defensive rotations, like over and over and over again. And that is not me crapping on Karl-Anthony Towns at center. Like it was another night where he was arguably the best thing the Knicks had going defensively. 3 steals and 3 blocks in the first half for the first time in his career. Had 17 rebounds by like the midway point of the third quarter. Got into foul trouble. I'm sure we'll talk about it. Only finished with 19, but this wasn't on him. This was on everyone else. I was really excited early in this game because Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby were kind of relentlessly crashing the glass early. They got 4 would-be offensive rebounds. 2 fell out of their hands, but I was thinking that's what the Knicks are going to need to win playoff games. This is, again, it's one game where you can wipe it off as one game. This was sort of their first quote-unquote playoff game, or if you want to call the other cup games playoff games, sure, but like their most intense game of the year. And in that sense, it was a litmus test. I was like, all right, if we're going to get Bridges and Anunoby crashing in the playoffs, that makes this team more legit in my mind. That makes them more like last year's group and insulates them with that toughness, with that ability to win a possession battle, on top of the fact that they're the best offense in basketball. That went away. They didn't shoot well. Dyson Daniels is apparently the Jalen Brunson stopper for the second time this year. He did an incredible job on Jalen, and the Hawks won. So kind of a depressing night, but a lot of stuff to look at.
Yeah, I'll give my Dyson Daniels shout out first. Like, that dude is phenomenal. He's a great defender. Makes me I'll toot my own horn for the second time today. I also talked to Locked On Today's Peter Bukowski for a segment on that show today. But I feel pretty good about liking him in the draft a couple years ago. I mean, he's turning out fantastic. We were also going over our draft record as the Locked On.
This is a great way to delay you talking about the game. You throw it to me, and then you're like, let's talk about our mock draft track record over the years.
I think that as many tangents I can go on in this game, I think for the better. But we would have drafted a hell of a team, including Dyson Daniels, if we were in charge of the Knicks. Not to say that Leon Rose hasn't been doing a great job too. But yeah, I thought the same thing. Another thing that I had said to Peter in that segment that I did for Locked On Sports today is like, I thought this was sort of a playoff atmosphere too, and playoff physicality. And my only complaint would be that I just, I don't want to make it seem like I think the officiating was the only thing, but I do think that it took a little adjusting, because it seemed like certain things were flying and certain things weren't. Like, to see the juxtaposition of like Cat getting called for like some wrist contact on a follow through versus OG Anunoby getting punched in the face on like back-to-back possessions, and one is a foul and one isn't. It was a little weird. But ultimately, again, you can't really blame the officiating when they still had every opportunity to stop that run, even with the officiating and whatever you want to say about it. Like, they were still generating open threes and just not making them. And that's the part where you go, crap, this makes it a little scary to think about this team like in the playoffs, where are they getting flustered by the fact that they're getting played physical, that when they try to go inside, they're not drawing fouls, and then they're not finishing through that. So then there's transition opportunities and everything else. But then the 3-point shot goes cold too. And then it was kind of just like, well, this is it. And they ultimately started looking pretty defeated on the defensive end too. I mean, I was saying to you before the show, like, the worst part to me was like towards the end of the game, they were still within kicking distance, like all the way up until about like 2 minutes left or so. And they kind of just shot themselves in the foot by this really asinine defensive strategy of just like, they were like, we're going to throw the kitchen sink at Trae Young and just pretend nobody else on the floor exists. And like, they kept doing that. And then they gave up like 6 backdoor dunks in a row and basically just waved the white flag at that point. I mean, it was basically over by their own design at that point. Just all in all, a disappointing effort. And hopefully, like, this Hawks team, and I say this Hawks team, but I mean just the Hawks over the years in the Trae Young era have had this weird way of occasionally showing us things we need to see about the Knicks. Like, whether it was that playoff series, whether it was, I think there was a regular season game where John Collins went like bonkers because they didn't pay enough mind to him. And ultimately, like in the Trae Young era, they have not put up a great record against the Knicks. The Knicks have more often than not come out ahead. But these first 2 games against the Hawks this year, I think the Knicks have learned a lot about how they can, or rather cannot, deal with teams with ultra lengthy wing defenders. And, just the Hawks just once again kind of came into Madison Square Garden, taught the Knicks a lesson, and hopefully it's something that they learn from and can build on as we, go through the season and eventually go towards the playoffs.
Yeah. And look, that's why these cup games, if like you and I kind of railed against the NBA Cup, and if you're a glass half full kind of guy or gal, you can say, hey, the Knicks will not have to play an 83rd game this year. They get a very beat up Orlando Magic team without their two best players instead of a Milwaukee Bucks team that's been playing amazing of late and has tortured the Knicks over the years. And then again, maybe getting a free game against the Thunder or the Warriors or the Rockets. That's the upshot. But I mean, to your point, like just not a good look for the Knicks, like in terms of like a game that ideally they would have come out and like put their best foot forward. And again, like the idea that like, all right, the right type of wing that maybe the Knicks didn't totally run into, like could give Jalen Brunson some trouble. I push back against that because you would have thought Miami would have been that team 2 years ago and they couldn't. Isaac Okoro couldn't really do it. Dyson Daniels, different kind of cat. Like he's a freak of nature. Jalen Johnson didn't shoot particularly well in this one. He's a freak of nature. And before we get into the specifics, and I thought Hart, Brunson to some extent, and Cat like really brought the necessary intensity, and I don't really think anyone else did in this game. So we can get into that more. I'll finish up this first segment, compliment the Hawks one more time. They have won 7 of 8 now over that stretch. They beat the Cavs twice. They beat the Bucks. They beat the Celtics earlier in this year. For whatever reason, they've been really good against the best teams in the East. They've not been very good against everyone else, all in all. So Atlanta's a good team. This isn't an embarrassing loss. This shouldn't be an existential crisis for the Knicks. It should tell them that, and maybe this is me making an existential crisis, that I think there are going to have to be some roster changes, whether that's getting another wing, whether it's as simple as getting Mitchell Robinson back. I think if you play him, he solves quite a few of these issues. But to win these types of series against a team like the Hawks, and there are teams like the Hawks out there, the Magic, the Celtics, the Cavs in some ways, but not really come to mind. There's going to have to be some changes, but that is probably a conversation for another day. For now, we got to go through the Knicks and tell you who struggled and why, and a really good night overall for Karl-Anthony Towns, but also some frustrating dumb fouls. We'll get into all that next here on Locked On Knicks.
But first, we had to let you know about our friends over at Game Time. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I used that very feature just recently. Went to go see another horrible Knicks game against Dallas in Dallas, but I got a great deal to go see it. So that was awesome. And Game Time helped me all along the way. My favorite thing is that they offer all-in pricing. So you can toggle that feature and it shows you the whole total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So when you're poking around on the stadium map and trying to find that right ticket, you're just looking at the exact price of what you're going to pay. When you go and hit checkout and hit, pay with my card, PayPal, whatever it is that you're going to pay with, that's exactly the number that you're going to see. So I love that part about Game Time. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time. All right, and we're back in to keep talking through this game, unfortunately. I was hoping maybe the program would crap out. We just wouldn't have to finish. And yet, here we are. Gavin, I think the guy that we should probably talk about if we want to, swing things in the positive direction would be Karl-Anthony Towns, who, despite running into some foul trouble issues, which kept him out of the game for some very important parts when he was kind of the only guy that could get anything going, ended the game with 19 points, 19 boards, 4 offensive rebounds, which led the team by a pretty good margin, 5 assists, 3 steals, 3 blocks. All those steals and blocks came in just the first half. I thought that he had the most intensity, I think, of anyone in this game. And I think that was the main thing that stood out. And that's what made it, I think, especially evident when he was sitting, in that the fact that the Knicks just seemed to lose their edge whenever he had to be on the bench. And unfortunately, that was more than you would want thanks to the foul trouble.
Yeah, I think you nailed it the other day when you said, like, everything we heard from Timberwolves fans and other quote unquote haters was that this guy is not tough. I use the word dog and his lack of dog an unfortunate amount in retrospect when talking about him when he came over. Like, he's biggest dog on this team tonight and has been for like long stretches of the season. Again, I thought Josh Hart was there with him. I thought Brunson for the most part still competed, even though it's a pretty terrible night for him. But Cat absolutely led the way. His defense, like 3 steals, 3 blocks. Like, on top of that, like, I just thought the effort was there consistently. There were times in the first half where Atlanta picked on him in the pick and roll and they got to 2-on-1s and he couldn't quite keep up with it. But like him and Mikal Bridges in the first half were just a dynamo defensive duo in containing Trae Young. Despite some mediocre shooting from 3, some poor shooting from the foul line, was why the Knicks were up and frankly should have been up by more in the first half. Like, over and over again, you saw Mikal, like, just a textbook, like, chase on Trae Young around the screen. Trae would step up and then like Cat would step up and on one play deflected a pass doing that. And then on the other end of the floor, like, Cat was able to turn defense into offense and hitting Mikal on a cut. Like, that was just a great two-way sequence. Couple of poor passes in the first half for turnovers, no field goals in the first quarter. But then from there, like, just an insane stretch to start the second quarter. I tracked it. He picks off a pass. He hits a 3. Few plays later, he gets a strip, passes up a good 3 to selflessly hit Josh Hart in the corner. Hart drives, hits OG for a lob. Then an offensive rebound in heavy traffic, flip shot in for what should have been an and one. I think Cat had fired away Brunson a little bit too, but Cat, like, tonight was the night where I was kind of with him when he would stay back and yell at the ref, because there were a bunch of plays where he got hit and just did not get the call. And then in the second half, just like starting to like put his head down and go downhill, just like a great bully ball drive to set Josh Hart for a layup. Another play where it was, I think it was actually Daniels who got stuck on him, and Hart was like, all right, you can swallow up Jalen. You can't swallow up me. Literal, like, just shoulder bump, banked in a runner, like another tough board and a putback, another 3, like just a monster two-way performance from him. And now the bad stereotype we heard about Cat that has been kind of true is he's very foul prone. And on some nights he just will defend with emotion more than with logic. And on a night they absolutely needed him to stay in the game, picks up his 4th foul on a moving screen, picks up his 5th foul. I think it was DeAndre Hunter driving to the rim. I can't quite remember, but just a play where you like absolutely have to go up and down. Again, the way it was being called, maybe that shouldn't have been called, but like still, like Doris Burke, I think, said it correct on the broadcast. Like, you just can't lose him at that point.
Yeah, I think the 5th one was that I think it was a Jalen Johnson drive, but either way, that was the one where it was like happened very soon after the OG getting smacked in the face, and then he just kind of swiped forward and it almost looked like he got ball, but he definitely got wrist. But it was like, man, I don't know, little different of a sort of, just like the way that things were going on both ends. It just was kind of weird to have that end up being his 5th foul. But the 4th one, I agree with you, like, totally stupid. I mean, apparently I couldn't hear it, but so on the MSG broadcast, like, Alan Hahn said, like, yeah, I could hear the ref yelling at him, like, I let you get away with 1, because he literally set 2 illegal screens in a row. And it's like, come on, man, don't push your luck. Like,
Yeah.
that you just got away with 1, so why set a second one? Like, what are you trying to accomplish here? Yeah, so that part was frustrating, but I am with you. Like, the fact that he was able to, just kind of keep his offense going, and really give the team sort of a shot in the arm when they needed it, I think was very sorely needed in this game. I think my favorite part was probably the excuse me, moment where he got probably fouled by, I think it was Okongwu, around the hoop, sort of was like, come on, like, to the refs, like, this should have been a foul. And then next time down, Okongwu kind of like gets up into him on the perimeter, and then he responds by just getting right by him and throwing down a lefty dunk.
Literally the play before the 5th foul. So it was the highest high and then the lowest low.
Highest high, lowest low. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it was, that sort of stuff is great. I love seeing that out of him. But yeah, the foul trouble stuff, he's got to be better with that. I do think that you'll get a little more leeway for that once Mitchell Robinson is back. So, I mean, that's sort of the ultimate thing that the Knicks need right now. They just, like, once you get Mitch back, obviously you lose that offense, but that you're going to get amazing defense and like the offensive rebounding and the putbacks and everything else. And you could kind of just like go back to playing the way you used to when Mitch is in the game, relying on that offensive rebounding. And I mean, I think about tonight, you mentioned it earlier, but like the difference that Mitch could have made in this game. I mean, that one, I think the most backbreaking possession of the game was the one where the Knicks put forth like 5 good defensive efforts and yet just lost the rebound every single time.
Yeah.
And that it was like Precious had a block, like OG altered a shot. I think Cat was Cat was not in it for that moment because he probably would have gotten the rebound. But I think it was like Mikal got a good contest on something. Like everybody got their hand towards something, and everybody either got a block or a deflection or something to make it so that the Hawks would miss another shot. And then every single ball just came off and ended up in a Hawk hand.
Yeah.
And it was just it got to be too much at a certain point, and then ultimately the Hawks scored 2 points off of that. But that was one of those where it may as well have been a 10-point shot because it just felt like it totally took the life out of the Knicks. And that's where you need a Cat in there because he was the only guy that could really credibly grab rebounds in this game against a really long team. But also a moment where, if you have a Mitch off the bench, maybe they'll be all right in the future. So hopefully that's the case. Gavin, there's still plenty of other guys to talk about, though. We still have Jalen Brunson, Mikal Bridges, maybe some of the other guys, although I don't know. None of them shot particularly well, and this game sucked. So I don't know how long I want to drag on because we have a whole rest of the season to talk about the rest of these guys. So we'll see what we get to in the next segment, but definitely some Jalen Brunson talk because I think that this was kind of a game to study for him going forward the next time he has to face some big wings. So we'll talk about that in just a second.
But first, we got to tell you about our good friends over at FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. It's the deal of a lifetime. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, you live play by play, and so I should know how to say that word, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I've told you guys all season, I am just looking mid-game, what's the Giants score, and I'm putting money down against them, and I don't even need the $150 bonus. I'm just winning every single week. You should join me in doing that. If you want to, just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, we're back, and I'm just going to do them as a combo in the name of keeping this concise, but I was disappointed in second half Mikal Bridges after I thought first half Mikal Bridges was awesome, and I thought OG Anunoby freaking sucked this game. As much as like we've had like a myriad of bad shooting performances from him recently after he just could do no wrong early this season. This was the nadir after he had bounced back for a couple of games. Like, I just need more physicality from the guy. Like, I think the play that embodied it for me was in the first half, he gets Trae Young on a switch. And all season long, OG has been punishing that over and over and over again. He has been sealing smaller guards, shoving them in the stanchion with an elbow that they probably have nightmares about, and then just dunking the basketball. And instead, like, he made like a half, I want to say a word I can't say. So I'm just going to say a half-hearted effort to get the ball. Josh Hart should have just thrown it up there anyways. He kind of looked him off. But again, like OG, like there are very few players in the league. It should be easier for OG Anunoby to seal than Trae Young. And he didn't do it. And to me, that epitomized the entire night in the sense that the Hawks over and over again victimized the Knicks' smaller players. Not even Jalen Brunson so much, but I really think of that third quarter sequence where it was DeAndre Hunter getting campaign on him and just blowing by him for a dunk, then getting Deuce McBride on him and just going right at him for a little flip shot, and then just like throwing like a "you can't guard me," and he was right. Like neither of them could guard him, and the Hawks victimized the Knicks' small guards. The Knicks could not make Trae Young pay for being on the floor, which has been something we've been talking about for 5 years. Literally, you go back to that playoff series. The only guy still on this roster is Mitchell Robinson. He didn't play in that series. He didn't play tonight. I say that to say this has been a conversation for a long time. It's been a blueprint for a long time, and yet the Knicks were unable to do it. And to me, OG Anunoby on a night where he wasn't shooting well, get to the freaking rim, and he tried once in the second half, got a steal on Trae. Should have been a dunk. They called the foul early. That's fine. On another drive, he gets blocked by freaking Bogdan Bogdanovic, right? Or I'm getting my Bojan and my Bogdan. I should know since he was on the Knicks, right?
Yep.
Bogdan. And he gets blocked by Bogdan. And it just, sometimes he's such an athletic leaper off 2 feet. And he's such an athletic leaper in transition. Like, he had a nasty Euro step dunk. And like, I was like, thank you. That's what I was looking for. And then just sometimes in the half court when he doesn't have momentum, like, he just looks so unathletic. And I need a kinesiologist on to explain that to me, or a biomechanics expert. That sucked. I'll say it one more time. I kind of said it already, and then I'll leave it to you. I thought Bridges just had a fantastic first quarter, like starting off the game with that wing three, like a number of great two-way sequences, offensive rebound for a layup, had a layup when the Knicks were down by 11 or 9 for the first time. Really good defense on Trae Young. And then the defense fell off in the second half. Trae got going. The offense was pretty much non-existent in the second half. Had 8 points, but 4 of them came in garbage time. So just not it was between the two wings. We got 1 quarter of good basketball.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I'm with you on OG. And for the Knicks as a whole, I mean, I won't even just put it all on OG, but like, they didn't match up on Young at all. The only time they did it was when Deuce was on the floor. They were clearly making a concerted effort to get it out to Deuce on the perimeter. And it's like, that's great and all, but like, Deuce isn't exactly like a elite driving force, you know what I mean? Like, which is what you would want to do, because they were just letting Trae sit out there on him, and like, Trae was able to credibly get a hand in Deuce's face because Deuce isn't huge. So he was playing like passable defense on him, and that was the only time they ever tried to exploit it, not when Trae would get switched onto a bigger player. And so the Knicks just kind of didn't play the Hawks at their own game in this one at all, which, to your point, was just picking on small guards. I mean, they just consistently were like, okay, like, out of like Jalen Johnson, Dyson Daniels, or DeAndre Hunter, like, who's got the small guy on them? Like, and most often it was DeAndre Hunter, because he's the least dangerous of those 3 options on offense, and he just tortured them. As far as Mikal, I'm with you too. I'll just say, to add on to what you were saying, I think in the second half especially, he let Trae Young get in his head a bit. Because there was one moment that I can pinpoint where it seemed like everything really turned for him, and that was when Trae did the break check on him. You know, he did the classic Trae Young move, which, you know, the NBA goes back and forth on whether they want to allow it or not, but where he, you know, gets by a guy and gets him on his hip and then stops and then throws his body back and then forward again to initiate the contact. And, you know, they called one of those on Bridges, and it was clear from that point on that he just like got frustrated, and then was just, I don't know if he was like protesting, you know, or whatever, but just was like, well, fine, I'm not going to even like defend him that hard then, because you guys are just going to call a foul on me. And it's like, well, you can't do that. You have to adjust. And, you know, maybe next time stay a little further back and try to get a block on him, or, you know what I mean? Like, your arms are 18 times longer than his whole body. Like, you're huge, you know, like, try to get a block on him or something. It just seemed like that kind of defeated him a bit. So I'm with you. It was just a very lethargic game for both of them. One that I hope we don't, especially between the two of them, between OG and Bridges, that we don't see again. I'll give Josh Hart his props where they're due. I thought that he had a pretty good game. 21 points, 8 boards, 6 assists, 8 of 12 shooting for him, 3 of 5 from 3. He was like the only guy that really had the 3-point shot going and punished the Hawks in this one. And then I'll do the same thing you did. I'll just lump these two guys together. You know, I thought that for as good as Hart was and whatever, like, Brunson had a tough game. I thought that Dyson Daniels really had him in the torture chamber. I think that the Knicks need to get a little more creative with how they create looks for him. And I think the way to do it in this game, and I mean, they were sort of doing it a little bit, but I thought that the real solution here would have been have Hart bring the ball down more, run Brunson off ball screens, and try to get him free, like, in catch and shoot scenarios. Like, just get the ball in his hands and let him get off a clean look as best you can. Run him off a double screen around the perimeter or something. Like, try to get the ball to him that way. I felt like they didn't do enough to try to do that for him, and just kind of were like, I don't know, figure it out against this guy who's like eating your lunch right now. Like, you know, it just, you know, I know that this guy is, you know, half a foot taller than you, and his wingspan is enormous, and he has the lateral quick, like, perfect lateral quickness, perfect leaping ability, perfect everything, literally the perfect defender, and he's on you. But I don't know, just take your regular like one pick and figure it out, you know. And it just felt very uncreative. It felt like there wasn't a lot of plan B. And to your point, this already happened once this year. Like, Daniels had a really good game against him the first time around too. and he didn't really seem to have much of an answer, which is rare for Jalen Brunson because
Yeah.
I feel like every time that and we mostly have seen this in playoff scenarios, but
Mm-hmm.
every time he's ever had a player like figure him out a little bit in one game, he comes back and destroys that player the next game by doing something that breaks through. And we saw that with like Kelly Oubre last year, for example, with the Sixers when he had a good game or two against Brunson, and then Brunson just came out and victimized him the whole rest of the series and said, you know what, I think I've got you figured out, and like was baiting him into getting off his feet more and using his footwork more and all that stuff. And it just worked out. Maybe the simple answer is just that Daniels is turning himself into like a top 2, top 1, whatever, along with like OG Anunoby defender in the NBA this season, and there just is no doing that to him. But we even see with OG Anunoby that he's fallible sometimes, and every player has their weaknesses and whatever. So I wish the Knicks would have done a little better job with that. But Hart, to his credit, in the times that he was bringing the ball down and the times that he was trusted with shooting threes or whatever, I thought had a really fantastic game. Was probably the only guy other than Cat on the Knicks, although even Cat has the asterisk of the foul trouble. I think Hart just played all in all a very good game, and even was the best defender on Trae Young at times.
Yeah, maybe I promised this last time I'll say something nice about Dyson Daniels, but I was just thinking about this while you talk. He's like, if you had Mikal and OG do a fusion dance, basically, like he's like all the best to both. Like he has the screen navigation, and he's like skinny enough and flexible enough in a way that OG like is in an amazing way for his size, but just more so like he's just crazy. But I think that's a great call by you. We saw last game Jalen hit 2 threes off of off ball movement. This game, he got a 3 off ball movement. Like Josh Hart hit him right after he hit Josh Hart in one play for like this nasty on the move bounce pass when he baited Bogey to take a step towards him, and Hart got a layup. And the next possession, he's moving up ball, and Hart said, "Let me repay the favor, buddy," and just hit him on the wing, put a 3 in Dyson's eye. And that was one of his last, like that might have been his last 3 of the night, one of his last buckets of the night. But I'm with you. Like if I'm Tom Thibodeau, like I think Jalen is a good enough shooter to say, hey, let's just go blatantly steal from Steve Kerr and like incorporate some Warriors sets for him and just like find ways, to your point, to run him through 7 screens and like put Dyson Daniels through the freaking ringer and say, hey, you might be like a freak of nature, but you're just not going to be able to navigate through these guys the way someone 7 inches shorter than you is. That would have been good. I would have screened over and over again with Trae Young's man and said, let's get that switch. And if you refuse to switch, then you have either Mikal, OG, or Hart just rolling into open space. And we've seen like Hart is a playmaker have a ton of success. OG is a rim runner, theoretically could have success. The Knicks at times have used him that way this year. And Mikal is like ultra skilled. And again, like after a really active first quarter where you had 9 points in the first quarter, like this could have been a 30-point game for Mikal. And we're one game removed from Toronto where like he did step up and he was that guy. Just needs to start being every night for him. But yeah, it's like a little concerning for Jalen to have this game on this stage. Like with the people who argue against him being a top 5 to 10 player, this is probably their case, saying like, hey, the right defender like can really bother him. You can counter with, all right, well, look at Luka. Like OKC took him out the night before, like outside of Jokic and kind of like Kevin Durant when he's at his best, and maybe Steph. Like they're just, the list of guys that are just truly, truly unstoppable is really short. And Jalen is about as close to that group without maybe quite being in that group. But again, give the Hawks credit. They did great. It's clearly not a good matchup for the Knicks. Hopefully one that they don't see in the first round. And I'm pretty much done. I thought Deuce had a good first half. I thought Payne, he hit the 1-3, but this was his worst game in a while. Like shot them out of it a little bit in the third quarter, like quick threes that were badly missed and maybe not quite in a rhythm yet, still recovering from that injury. I thought Precious sucked, honestly, for the most part. Like, had one nice driving layup, but like Okongwu getting rebounds over him. The Knicks just generally not able to get a rebound when he was in. Felt like he wasn't additive on offense at all when he was playing next to Cat. We were debating this pre-show, so I'll let you have the final point on this. But I was kind of happy that Tibbs went to Sims. I know he hasn't been great the last few games. I know he wasn't necessarily great tonight, but he came in and immediately altered a Trae shot. I just think they needed some semblance of rim protection, some semblance of rebounding. Like, I didn't care if it was Sims. I didn't care if it was Porty. I just, against this particular team, you needed someone in there that bigger than Precious Achiuwa. And it was a flashback. I've said this a couple times this year. It was a flashback to last year before they made the OG Anunoby trade, where this team just felt small at times. And it was such a nice security blanket to have the January version of last year's Knicks with that OG, Randall, Hartenstein front line. And you knew there might be nights where the Knicks shot terrible and just lost. They were never giving up 22 offensive rebounds. they were just never getting bullied. They were always the bullies. They were always the more physical ones. And this year's team, unfortunately, far higher ceiling offensively. They just don't have that guarantee every night that they're always going to be the instigators. They're always going to be the team shoving you off the ball. And they look small and less athletic. And that's my feeling coming out of this game. It can change. Mitchell Robinson, we said it 5 times, will help a lot, but a little bit of a tough night.
Yeah, I'll just say, I mean, in the Precious versus Sims debate, I didn't think the Sims added really anything that Precious wasn't. Like, I mean, as much as like Precious wasn't perfect, still had 2 steals, 2 blocks in this game. Like he did have some rim defense at times. So I just think that ultimately, like the fact that I mean, Precious like had kind of butterfingers in this one too. So I'm not saying they played great, but in theory, I can't really see sitting him for Sims ever. Like it boggled my mind, to be completely honest, because it was just like I think Precious does what Sims can do on defense just as well. I don't think Sims is actually like has been a fantastic rebounder this year. Like I think he's been fine enough, but I still see things where it's just like frustrating with him, where it's just can't get his hands on it, or like just can't be in the right spot for the rebound or whatever, which I think something the Precious is a little better at. But then offensively, it's just like you take a guy who literally can't do anything on offense and replace him with someone that can do something on offense. And that for me is the big thing where I would just be like, even on a bad night, you got to just let Precious play through it, I guess, because I still think it's more useful than throwing Sims out there. And I'm starting to kind of reach that point again where I feel like the numbers are lying to me with Sims, because I just watch his most recent games and I'm just like, I don't like these minutes. Like I feel like it always, whenever he ends up out there now, it seems to just grind the Knicks to a halt, and that's it. And then they're just like, it has enough power to like stop them dead in their tracks sometimes, and that's unfortunate. And in this one, it sort of did that. I mean, they already kind of stopped dead anyway by that point, so it didn't really do too much. But I guess I'll just say last thing: Deuce McBride did go out with an injury, and didn't come back in, and clearly seemed bothered by it. He got like sort of tackled by, I forget who it was on the other end, and like it looked like whatever player that, I'd have to like go watch a replay or whatever, but it looked like whatever player that was sort of intentionally trying to entangle himself with Deuce, and it put Deuce in a weird position, like with his knees and everything. And then apparently he tweaked, I assume, that knee that's been bothering him, and left the game and didn't come back in. So hopefully he's okay, because the Knicks clearly, I mean, they need all the depth that they have. And, you know, like you said, Campaign, not necessarily the most reliable guy game to game. Deuce generally a lot more reliable, although he had kind of an off shooting game as well. Although a couple of those came after he got hurt, which he clearly just had no lift at that point and didn't look pretty on one 3-point attempt that fell about 4 feet short. So anyway, I hope Deuce is good. But that's all for
I was looking. Don't see any comments from Tibbs on him, so hopefully that's a good
hopefully
sign.
It's nothing to write home about, or maybe people
beat writers are not doing their job. One of the two,
right? Either that or the beat writers just forgot to ask. I don't know.
Yeah.
Either way, this has been it. I can't believe we talked this long about this game. Let's cut this off now. Until next time, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk to you soon. Peace out, everybody.